we can get started. Okay, great. Like to welcome everyone to another episode of That's All Funny. My guest today is a legendary, at least to me, Israeli writer, Israeli writer, director, Etgar Keret. Is that how you say the last name?
Yeah, yeah.
I always thought it was Keret. I'm
No, it's
sorry.
it's Keret. It's funny because Keret means in Hebrew a metropole, a big city.
Mm-hmm.
And my first name, Etgar, means challenge. So basically, my name is Urban Challenge, which sounds like Nike sneakers or something, but that's my name, Urban Challenge.
I know my last name Areola sounds like the nipple, and everyone says that, oh, you're like a nipple or something. I'm like, yeah, I come from a long line of nipples. Uh no, I want to thank you for your time today, sir. I've grown up reading your stories, and they inspired me so much because I was uh into creative writing, and I would watch and read the stuff like Rod Serling would write for the Twilight
Of
Zone.
course, yeah.
Like Roald Dahl, I know he would
The
write.
short stories, yeah.
Yes, his short stories were just as wonderful, and I held you up to that bar because your stories are so it's like a flash fiction. I guess I don't know if that's the term to call it, but I always loved your stories because they sound, the dialogue is a lot like people, how they speak, like
Yeah.
where people stutter or people say, "Oh, I don't know," even though you could look up this information and write it in there. And I've always loved the imperfect. I'm not saying you're writing imperfections uh purposely, but I love that it sounds like a real person, like someone
It's like
with,
kind of a like stonewashed language. It's like somebody wore that language before.
yeah, no, and I've always loved your writing. I cannot recall when I first read it. It was a long time ago because right now here I've got the old um you
Ah, the
know
bus driver. Yeah.
yeah, the bus driver wanted to be God, and I remember reading the story, the bus driver that wanted to be God, and had the idea of like, you know uh gods existing, or people feeling like they have that god complex, and they kind of do, like they do have this power almost, with the bus driver. And I always thought of it in terms of a child with an ant hill, and they
Yeah.
can they can kill.
Step on it. Yeah.
Uh-huh, they can kill the ants, they could give them a piece of bread to have food for the day. And I always wondered, like what inspired that for you, that story? Do you believe in like a god or a higher power, or kind of amongst us?
Uh, well, first of all, I believe that there are many things that are beyond our understanding or our human grasp. But the thing is that the moment that, let's say, a religion, you have a institutionalized religion, the thing that I'm suspicious is not that, let's say, God exists, is that there are some people who tell me that they know what he wants. Because it's like I'm saying, look, I'm Jewish, and I believe that there are forces that I don't understand. But if somebody says to me, you know what God wants, he wants you on Saturday, on Shabbat, not to drive your car. And I say, come on, he's omnipotent, this guy, he can, what does he have? I'm gonna see my aunt. I'm gonna come in 10 minutes. Come on, lay back. So the idea is that I think that higher powers, they don't come with a manual.
Mhm.
And in the Bible and the New Testament or the Quran, in a sense, they try to be some kind of manual. They say, we know for sure what God knows. And I say, oh, come on, this is higher power. You don't understand anything about it. What do you mean? It's so simple. He just doesn't want me to make love to my neighbor's wife and everything be okay. What's his thing with my neighbor? Why is he getting involved? Do I tell him how to live his own life? It's really kind of a. I suspect that. I suspect the mediation, not the existence. I'm not a materialist. I would say I'm agnostic. And about the story, the story, it's one day I live in Tel Aviv, and one day I went to buy some groceries at the market,
Hmm.
and it's in Israel on Friday. It's kind of a half day because they stop the public transportation. Everybody's very very stressed. Everybody wants to get things done quickly. And as I was going down the main street, I saw this woman running after a bus, and she was this elderly lady, and she was running very slowly, and the driver, I was sure that he saw her, but he kind of left the station, and then there was a stoplight, and he turned red just as he reached it. So this woman kind of reached his door, and she wanted to get home. She was stressed, so she was banging on the door, and the driver totally ignored her. And at some point, like, she was so desperate that she puts her bag on the ground, and she looked up at the driver because they're up there on the bus, and she
Hmm.
looked up and she did this motion. And the moment she did this motion, the gates of the bus opened, and she took her things and got up. And when I looked at it, I thought, how godlike bus drivers, or for that purpose, any human being is. If I work in McDonald's and you tell me I'm a vegetarian, can you give me the bun without the hamburger? And I say, I'm sorry, sir, I can't do that. Then I'm also kind of this little technocrat god who kind of uses my power, but at the same time, not kind of seeing things through other people's eyes.
Yeah, no, it's crazy that it just you simplify it so much, but yeah, it's like people have this power in normal life over other people. It almost determines their fate. So it
And,
is godlike.
and I think that we are living in an age, and I think that people would always say that about fundamentalist religious people. But I think that that now it doesn't matter what ideology you're holding. Mostly the ways that ideologies are being put to the world today, they say basically, we got it. You dumb guys, you didn't get it, but we got it. So shut up and do this. And it doesn't matter if it's about climate change or about how do you say, vaccinations,
Hmm.
or about political issues. The idea is that it's not like kind of, wow, this is complicated. I almost got it. I think maybe we do that. It's move aside, you asshole. You don't know how to do anything. And this and there is something about these things that I think that it's very much amplified by social media. But that when you see people, for example, I don't know, storming the Pentagon, or going to the Capitol, then
Hmm.
then this wouldn't have happened 20 years ago, because basically in the zeitgeist, people wouldn't feel entitled, to say, I think the direction went this way. Where is my hat with the horns? Come on, Jenny, we're going. It wouldn't go this way. You would say, oh my God, that unbelievable. I suspected, but now you don't suspect. Everything is known, and I see it in Israel. That in Israel we have the same kind of binary rift. In Israel, it's mostly between religious Jews who are more to the right wing, and the liberal people who fight for equality. But what I see is that that this disagreement always existed, but now I see the lack of respect, not even for the views that other people hold, but for what they are, for their genetics. If you are from one side and you look at the other, they all look to you like some walking piles of, I don't know what.
No, I get it. And even you writing this story, I don't know how long it was ago, years ago, and to me it still stays like relative, how I don't know. It's not that this person, the bus driver, thought he was God, but he, was kind of a god to someone, to where it's like, okay, I know how I affect people. And then I don't know, it's just an interesting idea. He's
And
merciful.
yeah, that's the thing, because many people do things in the name of God. Many people were murdered from all religions in the name of God, and and I think that it's very easy for me. Anything I would want to do right now, I could justify it by God's will,
Hmm.
because if I would want to take revenge on you, then God is vengeful, and if I
Hmm.
would want to outsmart you, then God is wise, and
Hmm.
if I would want to ask you for that, then I bet that God is sexy too. Come on. So it's this kind of thing that that has all the aspect. We are in God's image. Let's say if we believe that. So if we're in God's image, everything in us came from God. So this idea of saying, but this is God's will. So I say, okay, everything is God's will, and
Yeah, yeah.
me farting is God's will, otherwise he would have built me in a different way. It's not the fact that we are part of creation doesn't give you this kind of leverage of saying, haha, this is right. I say, no, this is not right. This is here. This exists. We exist. Celebrate that. But don't say that because we exist, then I have to go to the synagogue or to the church or to call you he, she, them. We exist. And then let's work our way up and basically, try to do as little harm as we can and live our life and not try to kind of a pigeonhole, our entire multi-layered existence into something that we can explain in a tweet.
Hmm. Yeah, and I just feel like it's people, I don't know, I don't want to say they want to escape the liability or the accountability by uh saying it's God's will. But I'm sure there are people that are sincere out there somewhere that do
No,
believe.
I believe that they believe in that, and you know what? I not only I believe they believe in that, they're right. Because if there is a God, then what you're doing, kind of in the peripheral, is like, I mean, God has many wills. You know, He can be merciful and He can be vengeful. It depends what day you catch Him. So if I go and I say, I'm doing God's will. Then I said, when was the last time he texted you? What is his will now? It's. I think that this idea of reduction of an obscure and transcendental idea to this kind of idea that I'll give you 20 rules and a guy with a beard that will tell you when you're doing things wrong. I say, it's disrespectful to God.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Nobody would
It's
have done that to Elon Musk, but to God, they say, oh, yeah, we can do that. He's not here. He's not in the board.
I there was a story that always resonated me, and I believe it's from the bus driver wanting to be God. It's called Good Intentions. And I don't know
Yeah.
if you've written
Yeah.
so many stories. I don't know what you may
Oh,
remember or
if I want
forget.
to remember them, who remembers them?
Uh,
It's really, but
it,
good intention. I can uh, tell it in 3 sentences. It's
uh-huh.
basically a story about a hired killer who gets a contract to kill the only person who ever did a good thing for him. It's this philanthropist who helped him when he was in an orphan house.
Hmm.
And basically, he decides not to kill him and to tell this guy that somebody's out to kill them. And apparently, this philanthropist is this kind of compulsive do-gooder,
Hmm.
this guy who's so empathic that is all the time moved by other people's pain, and he just wants to end it. He can't bring himself to kill himself, but he keeps paying people to kill him, but none of them will kill him because he's a good guy, and nobody wants to kill a good guy.
Yeah. And I've always, I don't know, it's resonated me that idea because especially now there's like a big boom on mental health and people's health, like with their minds and stuff like that. And I remember working with a gentleman that he would always want to buy breakfast for everyone. Or if there was a homeless man, hey, yeah, I'll give you $1 and or $20 or whatever. And he was like such a good guy to where I feel like people took advantage of him. And this story always resonate with me about that because people, if you're like you said in the story, if you're like a crazy mean person, mentally speaking, people will say, hey, you need help, you need help. But then if you're compulsively good and it's making you miserable, no one's gonna bat an eye because it benefits everyone, and it goes to the idea to me of like mental health and how we're fine with some of it, but others obviously not so much.
Yeah, it's I think that when you live in a society, and I'm not saying it in criticism, I'm just saying it is a fact, then basically there is the personal aspect and there is the social aspect. And from society's perspective, for example, if you're a psychopath, an ex killer, it's a problem.
Oh
But
yeah.
if you're somebody who's very miserable, then it's only a problem to yourself. Nobody has to run. So I think that there is this kind of tendency that you don't really look at the system and you say, is everybody happy? But you say, is anyone running after me with an axe? No. Okay. So I think everything is okay. That's the way societies function.
Yeah, and I love that he you can tell he's sick, that he's tortured. And I love the end of it when the guy's like, I'm sorry, I can't do it. And even then he's like, that's fine. I'll buy your coffee. Take care. You could tell he's just a sick man, just as sick as a serial killer, just as sick as, a mentally ill person, because he's unable to sleep, he's unable to eat, thinking of all the problems in the world. And as long as it benefits society or, doesn't really bother anyone like the serial killer, uh, no one, they just let it go on. And I don't know, I suffer with a little bit of mental illness, and that story really like got to me, like, man, like there are people out there that would bankrupt themselves to help someone else, and no one would say, hey, you're sick too, you need help. But no, I
and
really love that story.
Oh, thanks. And you kind of you meet somebody to deal with your problems and stuff, or you just deal with them yourself.
I mean, I take a lot of medication. It's more like, I'm afraid to leave the house, the kind of agoraphobia where I go too far from my house and I get kind of like scared and stuff like that. So it's I don't know, it's been an issue forever. And then it was one of those things where I learned to cope, and you keep coping, and then finally it breaks you, you know what I mean? Like, to where it's like, man, it just fell
Wears
all
you
on top
down.
of me. Yeah, and it's exhausting, but at the same time, I should have, what's the word, like, taken care of it earlier, but I was just trying to work, take care of my family, stuff like that. That was the priority. I didn't care about my happiness. I didn't care about uh my time. As long as I go to work, take care of my family, I'm fine. You know what I mean? Like, that's,
Yeah,
I guess in my culture, the like Hispanic, the Mexican culture, you just want to work for your family and make sure they're taken care of. Not that that's not other cultures too, but
yeah, but you know that I think that what we're really feeling in this world, and I think that we felt it in the COVID, and we still feel it now, is that people always define themselves by the work, you know? People
Mhm.
would go to the grave saying, I'm a sailor, I'm a shoesmith, I'm a postman. I don't know. It would be their identity. And I think that, now we're living in an age where we suddenly begin to understand with technology that we're not as crucial or as necessary as we thought we were. And this idea that maybe, with some AI and stuff, they don't really need us, then it really kind of amplifies this question of meaning or existence, because if you say, what, first I'm going to end this month, get along with my mad boss, bring the check home, then I'll think about my life. But the moment that people will say, what, no obstacles, think about your life, it's one of a thing to think about, to build your life from scratch. Right now you are kind of put in a box. But if I would say to you, tomorrow you wake up, no work, no problem, no, just do the right thing, So half of the people are gonna hang themselves for sure. And the other half are gonna help them down and say, come on, Greg, stop that. You can cope with that.
You're absolutely right. It's I don't know. The world's strange because I'm 36 years old and I've seen like, the world where at the beginning of my life, or at least in my teens, mental health wasn't that big of an issue. It was like, oh, get over it, blah blah blah. Now it's a huge thing, and we see like the internet with the influx of people's opinions seemingly meaning more, at least to them and to the world. But it's just a strange I don't know, to live in that kind of middle ground where you saw the past and now you're living in the future of
Yeah, I think that, the whole idea is that the change process accelerates. So, for example, when you were a kid, then I don't know, then they just started to have cell phones.
Mhm,
Oh, but but since then they had the better cell phones, and then you could communicate with satellites, and you can do this and you can do that. So I think that there is something about these accelerations that, that when I was 5 years old, they put the first ATM machine in my town. So my father tried to teach my mother how to use an ATM machine, and she said, I'm not going to get it. I don't want to. And my father looked at her and he said, listen, it's very simple and you need to learn it. And the moment that you learn it, you're going to use it for the rest of your life, you
mhm,
know? And
mhm.
she learned it. And, and for the next 45 years, she will use this technique with the ATM code. And then I'm saying today, when I go to my son, I say, hey, listen, how do you work this app? He says, Dad, don't worry, don't learn it too much. In 2 weeks, you're gonna have something better, So this idea that you're like kind of a hamster running in a wheel. It's basically the stuff that you do is not necessarily the stuff that you always do. The proficiencies that you earn are proficiencies that maybe won't be useful. So there is something very, very confusing. If you're a monkey and your dad wants to teach you how to climb a tree, and you say, Dad, would I ever use that? Maybe I'll go to high tech, I don't know. Why I don't like climbing on trees, But monkeys don't do that. They learn how to climb because they know they're gonna use it. And now we're living in a time where basically so many things that people took pride in. For example, people who had the amazing memory. You
Mhm.
know, people used to respect guys who could remember phone numbers. You know,
Yeah.
navigate, knew all the little streets to go through, and then suddenly these proficiencies that are incredibly important for an animal's survival become almost irrelevant. So I think that in this kind of frame, it's like you asking yourself, what are we playing? Is it a baseball, football, or maybe we're boxing? I don't know. Something, it's like the rules keep changing. My son always says that humanity is a Netflix series, and that we are in the last episode of the season. So always in the last episode of the season, things move fast and all kinds of questions are being opened. So
Uh-huh.
so we're living in a cliffhanger.
And we don't know how it's gonna end. There's no spoilers. And I have here I don't remember when I found the Risk Cutters love story, and I remember watching this movie, right? Because I thought it was interesting. This was back when Blockbuster existed, and I think I found it, it was like a $5 for 4 movies or something. And I remember watching it, and the way it ended, I was like, that ending's kind of I think it feel it should have ended this way. And then I read your story, and it ended the way I wanted
You
it to
felt it,
end.
huh?
Yeah, I was like, that's I mean, it's the darker way, but it's the better plot, you know what I mean? And I just wanted to ask you about like uh I don't know if it's like it's an old story, right? It's pretty
Yeah, yeah.
kind of old. Uh how was it making, because nowadays suicide is such a hot topic, or maybe it even was back then, but for you to make like light of it and kind of humorous, I always thought it was hilarious, you know what I mean? And
Yeah. So first of all, I want to say that that writing the book that inspired Risk Cutters, it basically it was self-treating my own traumas because my best friend shot himself when I was with him,
mhm,
and a a few people that were very close to me committed suicide. So the question of kind of a of of taking your own life was something that was always kind of an option or on the table because I saw people doing it, around me.
yeah.
And I think that there's always this kind of thing in writing. It's first and foremost some kind of a way of convincing myself, that I choose life, that I want to live, that I don't want to end it, that I want to see what's going to happen tomorrow. And I think that I wrote this book from this place, and even though all the people there live in the afterlife, I imagine them like people I know from around me. And the idea was that these people who kill themselves in the story, they're a little bit like people who kind of lost their yearning, who lost their passion,
Hmm.
and in that sense, I didn't feel that I was making fun of dead people, or people who committed suicide. I was making fun of the people who were alive,
Hmm.
who turned into metaphorically dead in my stories. But it's like I know that people in Israel, we have those kind of phone lines for people who feel that they are in a emotional and mental risk. So you call them for help. So they told me more than once that sometimes when people call and they're suicidal, they read them my stories.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because they say there is something in your mentality that is very close to the mind of a suicidal person, but somehow you kind of collect it and you take it to something that is kind of optimistic, but they say that it communicates very well with people who are in deep depression. I guess maybe there is a side of me that is in constant deep depression or this, but when you kind of mixed it with other things, it comes out made up stories.
Yeah, no, no, and I love the story. Like I said, the movie, I saw it and I was like, I think it should end this way, and then read your Neller's Happy Campers, and I was like, oh, okay, it did end that way. No, so that's
So I have a funny story about the ending of the film because Goran Dukic, the talented director who shot it, basically. when he changed the ending, because even without getting into spoiler, my book ends with a sad ending, and his film ends with a happy ending. Then he was very reluctant about it, and we talked about that. And he said, I want to shoot two endings, and I don't know which one to pick. And I said to him, which one do you like better? And he said, I like the happy ending better. So I said to him, what's your dilemma? And he said, I don't want to change your book. And I said to him, you know what? You pick the ending you want. You go to the premiere, you come back, take my book from the shelf, and you see that the book hadn't changed. You're only making your movie. And I feel that when people do an adaptation, it should always be their interpretation. The loyalty should be with the reader of the text and not with the people who wrote it. It's not a Bible. And for
Mm-hmm.
me, it was very interesting to see that, that Goran basically being born in former Yugoslavia, living in LA for most of his grown up life, the takes that he had on the story was very interesting for me. Suddenly, it became more kind of a California slackery, you know, kind of a spiritual Buddhist thing, and it connected it in a wonderful way. And as a writer, I think that the most exciting and moving things that can happen to you is that you write a story, somebody does something with it, a movie, writes a song, does something, and when you listen to it, you say, "Oh my God, it's him, but it's also me." It's
Mm-hmm.
like it's like when you have a child. Oh, he has his father's eyes. There is this kind of where do I end and where this guy starts, and there is something beautiful in it. Very comforting.
Yeah, no, you could see like the seeds of your story in there, as well as like, his interpretation, which is good because people would probably think, oh, he's just copying it word for word. What's the point of his interpretation? So I completely understand that. You
It's like I must say that my favorite film adaptation is Apocalypse Now,
mhm,
and if you read Heart of Darkness, then basically the stories are so different because Heart of Darkness take place in Africa in the beginning of the 20th century, and Apocalypse Now is in Vietnam, and during the Vietnam War. So everything, like the screenplay writer and the director, they changed everything, but they kept the essence of this idea of humanity going into nature and becoming primal. So I think that these are the most interesting adaptations are really when somebody reads a book and says, oh my God, that reminds me of my time in Vietnam. And that
mhm.
through one text you get into another. It's really amazing.
No, it is. And I was wondering, stories like this, like Neller's Happy Campers and a lot of the other stories that are I don't know, I love them. They might have like mild, explicit things, a little bit of racism, but to me that's the world. Is there anything now that you're more mature, I'll say, with a child and all that, that you regret, not regret writing, but you look back at your writings and you're like, man, maybe I pushed it too far, or this was something I would have changed, or you even look back and you're like, man, I wrote that. That's good. That's gold, like do you ever have those feelings like that?
I have that a lot. I think that it's really it's looking at the older work is a little bit like looking at a photo album, you know.
Hmm, hmm, hmm.
And if you look at my photo album when I was 20, for some reason, I only wore t-shirts that were like fisherman net, you know, where everybody can see that I'm very hairy and they can see my nipples. and for some reason and for some reason I thought that this was the coolest thing. So when I look at this photo, I don't say to myself, who is this stupid guy with the weird shirt? But I say to myself, yes, that's how I used to be. Wow, I was really weird then, but this idea of kind of a documenting pieces of you across time. So I think that I'm not talking about craftsmanship, but I'm talking about the stories themselves. Then I when I read the old story, I say, oh my God, I really suffered during my army service. I don't say to myself, I wouldn't have said that now, because of course I wouldn't, I wouldn't wear the fisherman net shirts now. But when I look at it, I say, oh, yeah, I was young. I believed that I had the body of Apollo or whatever. And I want to say to you about this idea about writing more extreme or less extreme. That, I write this newsletter. And in the newsletter, sometimes I have this column. I call it human rights, which means like human rights, not
Oh, okay.
and it's a lot about some kind of connection between art and my life, So in the latest column, I wrote about how I enjoy spitting. I like to. I love that. I really do. What can I do? So so when so in the column I say that my wife says it's like for me it's a few problem. One, that you spit in the street, it's a problem. But the other, that you don't try to hide it, and the third one, that you always seem so happy when you do that, you know
Yeah, you
and
should at least feel shame about it.
all I kind of
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
with it,
Uh-huh.
it's so 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 I said I say in the camera, I said to her, look, the idea that there was this kind of disgusting thing inside my lung, and now I have a chance to evict it, to get this piece of crap out of me,
Hmm.
makes me very happy. And the fact that I think that every person who look at us and say, you know what, I prefer to have this little piece of spit on the pavement and not inside your lung. It's also a given, like why, like, I'm doing a good thing. Hey guys, look at me. I'm feeling better, So in the text, I compare spitting to writing, in that sense that that you can write a story or a song, and people say, "Why did you write that? That's so offensive," But you say, "I wrote it." I'm not creating damage in the world. I'm not burning down villages. I'm not giving people order. Yeah, I go. You don't like it that I spit on the pavement, lady? Okay, move to the other pavement. It's
Hmm.
okay. Let's see if
Hmm.
you find a policeman in time. It will take you 5 hours. But the entire idea in this about this kind of a thing is that when you write, you are not a teacher teaching little children how to behave. When you write, you give some kind of documentation of the human condition, and it has to be sincere, and it has to expose things that are usually not exposed, because if it's things that are already exposed, then who needs to write stories for that? You need to be able to peek into people's mind and to see the things that you usually won't meet when they have a dialogue with you, and to meet all kinds of people, even the people that in real life you wouldn't want to meet. And I think that this is why there is something about I think that in people always talk about safe space. You know this idea? Hey, I
Hmm.
thought this was a safe space. Why are you saying that I'm short? I thought it was a safe space.
Uh,
Because I'm short, even when I'm in safe space, I'm short. But this idea, this weird concept of safe space, which the thing about it is that when people say safe space, then our definition of safety is different. So let's say if I'm an elderly, homophobic, if a homophobic elderly person goes to a shopping mall and he sees a gay couple, then it's not a safe space for him, you know? While for other people, if they go to a shopping mall and somebody reads from the scriptures something, then it's not a safe space for them because they're atheistic or believe in another religion. So I'm saying that this entire concept of creating safe space in life isn't true. Life isn't safe. It's never
No,
safe.
no.
So the only real safe space for me is writing. Writing is like this real padded room, you know. I'm saying if you want to punch your neighbor, write a story about that. You know, it's better for your neighbor and it's better for you. So
Uh-huh.
I'm saying that the fact that people treat fiction or as if it's something real, that they say it's really because for example you when you talked about my stories, then you say some of the people in my stories use racist language.
Hmm.
They can say, hey Jew, come here, or I don't know, hey or something. But
Hmm.
the question is, are the stories racist? Now,
No.
if yeah, so that's the thing. So I tell you something because I love Mexico, and you have a Mexican roots. And
Hmm.
Mexico is basically, I think, maybe the country outside of Israel where I've the warmest audience, ever.
Hmm.
So when Trump wanted to build the wall, I wrote a piece for an American publication. And in the piece, I said, it was just after he got elected. I said that after he wanted to grab all the women by the pussies, now he wants to grab all the Mexicans by the huevos. And I said, this is no way to govern. This is where to get into trouble. So the American publications say we will not publish it. Say why? Said because it's insulting toward Mexican people. Why? Because you say huevos. So Trump will grab them by the huevos, then you colonize their language. And I say, yeah, but I write this. I'm writing that Trump is an asshole and that he's mistreating Mexicans. They say,
Hmm.
yeah, but you are using the language. You have no. So in the end, I got so tired that I said, you know what? Don't publish it. And I published this piece in a Mexican newspaper. And in the Mexican newspapers, they had no problem because they
Hmm.
also were feeling that Trump was trying to grab them by the huevos. So it was okay to say it. So I'm saying that, it's like the idea is that if we make the language correct and clean, if we make the fiction beautiful, it will not help us because we don't live in fiction. We live in real life. When
Hmm.
I watch Netflix series, there's always equal representation. I see Hispanic CEOs, women flying planes, and I say, "Oh my God, I want to live in Netflix." But then I go to the street, and I see, another white heterosexual CEO shouting at somebody who's not from Israel. So I'm saying, how about you'll fix life, and leave literature alone? It's when I was a kid, I remember that they had a couple of plane crashes, so they made a rule in all the airplanes company in the world that doesn't matter which airline you fly, what time they're not allowed to screen movies in which planes crashes in.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Now I say, take this energy and fix your engines. I don't mind being in a plane and seeing a movie about a crashing plane, but I do mind being in a plane, seeing a Western and crashing into a mountain. That's the things that bothers me, and that's the thing we should deal with. This is the things that we should police and confine and control, not people's idea and mind. If I say to you, oh my God, I'm going to write this story in which I pretend to be a hat, Lorenzo, and you buy me in a store, and I don't tell you I'm a human being. I just keep saying I'm a hat, and I sit on your head. And every time you take a selfie, I make a copy, and then I show it to my friend, and I say, "Hey, look at this dumb fuck! I've been sitting on his head for 5 months, and he didn't even know." So I'm not doing anything. I'm just thinking. I'm just imagining. It's okay. I can write stories, where me Biden and his wife are doing a threesome, and my wife wouldn't mind because it's a story.
Yeah.
It's not in the real world, and I think that this is a horrible time for people who are thinkers and who likes to imagine things because you are being confined from all directions. Rushdie can get stabbed, in the name of Islam. A work of Van Gogh can get tarnished in the name of ecology, and people can, I don't know, stop a reading in the name of feminism, all kinds of it. I say, take this energy, change things that are real. It's really
Hmm.
like, when people talk so much about Kanye West give giving anti-Semitic remarks, you know? So I'm saying it's not real. It's a tweet. It's a guy writing a sentence. When I was in school, I would write, the teacher is stupid, and it's not nice, but it didn't turn her stupid. She was stupid to begin with. I was just writing something on a wall. And I'm saying that we take so much importance to sentences, and sometimes so little important to human life. It's really, I mean, if Kanye West says, I think Hitler is a cool guy, then he's a guy who tries to create a provocation and sells all kinds of shoes and sings very well. And for me, this is not news. News is like 35 people dying, in bombing in the Ukraine. You
Hmm.
cannot balance all those things together and say, oh, it's this match, and this match is my experience. And in my experience, if somebody says to me, here's a selfie with me sitting on your head, then it insults me or hurts me just as much as knowing that 500 Ukrainian people died. So this is in your universe, but in the world, there are people who breathe and stop breathing, and people who just talk shit and write shit and tweet shit, and who cares?
No, you're absolutely right. People think that the world revolves around them, and the world just revolves. Like, why, I don't know. I don't want to say on the line of like not everyone is important in this world. Like, there are people that everyone has a story, as far as life goes. But yes, some story of those people's stories, they don't really matter.
But no, no, I think that it's very subjective, and it matters to some and it matters less to other. But I think that the important thing is that the important power behind it, and it has to do with something that I believe that we both suffer from, because all humanity suffer from is this idea of anxiety
Hmm.
and of seeking safety. I think that that with me, I'm a bit of an agoraphobe,
Hmm.
but the funny thing is that if I'm on stage, I have no problem. It's difficult for me, no, really, to be in the audience because I don't know what's going on. But when I'm on stage, I feel that I know what's going on and everything is okay. But
Hmm.
but I can identify with that. But I think that the idea with anxiety, that anxiety is something that protects us to some extent, but
Hmm.
mostly limits us because we're scared. Then we're doing less of the things that we would have done when we're not scared. No, I'm saying the the communication, it doesn't matter if it's movies or if it's stand-up comedy or whatever, then the whole idea is that we can overcome our anxiety, because my fear when I act in real life, I don't want to hurt people and I don't want to be hurt. So if I do something or say something, I can piss people off and they'll beat me up, or I can
Hmm.
hurt them and they go and cry in the corner. I wouldn't want it, neither of that to happen. So many things that I feel and resonate in me, I don't expose them because I say I just want to go home and everything will be okay. But I'm saying the moment that I write it on a page, then I say to everybody, leave me alone.
Hmm.
Leave me alone. It's
Hmm.
a story. I'm making it up. This is just the bit where I'm eating the heart of Anthony Hopkins and saying, "Ha ha, got you from Silence of the Lamb." I don't know. I can say that, and don't stop me from saying that, because Anthony Hopkins is okay, and I'm not hurting anybody. I'm just writing stuff that is in my mind. I'm telling you a dream that I had. If in my dream, I bomb planet Earth, then you don't put me in jail for that. It's just something, an image that I had in my mind.
Hmm. No, and I'm sorry I don't want to keep you uh really like too long, and I really appreciate your time. A couple more things. I know just real quick, you had the story, what do we have in our pockets? I
Yeah.
really love it. The whole idea that, I don't know, to me it represented like that you're always ready, and there's an idea that like fate is in control of you, but you could kind of sway fate to a certain direction if you have the right quote unquote tools or the right, item at the right time. And I was just asking, do you believe in like the whole idea of free will? Like, or do you think our fates are already like written?
Well, first of all, I want to say about the story that the guy in the story, he has a lot of stuff in his pockets, and he believes that this will come handy if he'll ever have a chance to meet the love of his life.
Hmm.
So I'm saying, like, I think that for me it's a story of kind of acknowledging your difference, saying people tell themselves one story and I tell myself another story. People say, don't put all this stuff in your pockets. And I say, I can tell myself a story where it's really useful. So I think it's about this kind of legitimation, saying the fact that my story is different than yours doesn't mean that it's not a good story. It's not a valid story.
Hmm.
Uh, but the question about a predetermined word or free will, then basically I'm saying it. If you would show me a planet, I would inspect it thoroughly. But since I'm a player, since I'm holding shares here, I would say, just for my interest's sake, that my free will can affect the world. Because I'm saying, if this would be a Hollywood production, if I have a free will, I have a better and bigger role. It's
Hmm.
more nice to be on the set thinking that you can affect the way that you live. So I'm saying, since I don't have all the info, and since it's an arbitrary decision, then I'm going with the ones that serves me better.
Hmm. And again, one last question. What do you think about artificial intelligence, the AI? Do you think it's gonna hurt creatives or help creatives in the long run? As far as I know, you've done a lot of creative, like your stories, obviously, directing movies, writing graphic novels and all that. Do you think it's gonna hurt more or help more?
Uh, so I think, it's all about changes, and for me, what I like, with the AI, it can go to many directions. I tell you, the scenario that I fear the most is not the ones that I, theoretically or technically, I believe that AI can write better stories than human beings, stories that will be so sophisticated and elaborate that only another AI can understand them. No human being will be even able to understand them. But the idea is, uh, what is your purpose when you write? So when I write a story, I say, you know what? I don't know. I feel like crying, and I don't know. Maybe I have hemorrhoids too. Man, I'm writing a story. Yeah, I'm writing a story. So what's really happening is that I'm trying to communicate to you something. Basically, when I write a story, I want you to know how I feel, how confused I am, to feel my emotions. Now, when an AI writes a story, is not focused in transferring his emotion or his being, because it doesn't have that, but is focused on making you pleased. So I think that the difference between, let's say, a work of fiction written by a human being and a work of fiction written by AI is a little bit like talking to a guy in a donut store or talking to Siri.
Hmm.
So basically, I think both of us are anxious people. It's safer to talk to Siri. Let's be honest. It's really we say to Siri, and she never tells us dirty, racist jokes. She never argues that we didn't give her the $5 even when we give her the five. She's really okay. So Siri would be a little bit like what I would imagine art coming from an AI. It will be an art that will not bother you, that will not uh, get you confused or obscure about anything. It will feel like this perfect foot massage. And
Hmm.
I think that basically humanity in general is losing its tolerance. It's really like it's like if instead of walking from place to place, you would use a scooter, you won't be able to walk. And we are losing our tolerance all over. Now, what I
Hmm.
believe that a danger in a meeting with art is that losing our tolerance to artistic challenges basically could create something that will be totally effect driven. It's like you will read a story and it will be so funny and it will get you horny and you cry in the end. But free for the price of one. But the thing with stories is not that they move you from side to side, they push this button, they push that button. Is that they give you something that you need to digest, and what you have to digest is this kind of a primal meaning of the person who wrote them. And if this person doesn't have one, then it will be very easy to digest. No farts. And we began with God wants us to fart, and with AI would want us to stop farting.
Hmm. That's well said. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Carrot, Edgar Keret, for your time. I really
Thanks.
appreciate it. I
And I
really,
hope that one day we'll meet in person. Where do you live?
I'm in San Antonio, Texas. I'm in,
Oh, okay. It's gonna take a
yeah.
while until I get there, but
You never know.
you
The
never know.
world keeps getting smaller and smaller, but I really think you're a legend. I look up to you.
Thank you.
As far as your writings go, they make me think, you can write how you talk. Like that's what I've always liked about your writing is it's as if you're having a conversation with yourself or with your buddies where there's imperfections, but they're real, the dialogue and all that. And I don't
And
know.
I say perfection is for losers.
Yeah, yeah. I've always thought of like Bob Ross with his happy accidents. You make an accident and it's like, oh, you lead into it. And yeah,
Yeah,
I really appreciate your time because I've always, like I said, I put you in that category with Rod Serling, Roald
thanks.
Dahl, and I have you there, and I really appreciate your time. I hope you nothing but continued success,
Thanks.
and good health, and yeah, thank you so much for coming
And the
on today.
same to you. So thanks. Bye
Uh-huh.
bye.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.